right, so first of all, I'm super excited that the previous speaker was talking about languages, because obviously, this is also the topic of mine. And yeah, so you guys already have some context, which is super helpful. And the title of my talk was originally Societal Impact of AI and Importance of Culture and Language in the Age of LLMs, which sounds too boring. So I changed it to Should English Win? Or Why It Actually Matters Where the Borsch Comes From. And quick question, who knows what borsch is? Huh, that's surprising actually. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that many people to know what it is. But borsch is a national soup of Ukraine, and it was recently basically claimed to be the endangered Ukrainian heritage by UNESCO, and it was a pretty big deal. And the thing is that this is basically an example of why cultural heritage matters, and through the prism of many dimensions, it's a very important topic. You're probably thinking, like, what is this guy even talking about? Why is he talking about the soup? And I can tell you, before I go deep, why I became basically an ambassador of a red soup here in Silicon Valley. And it's story time. And I really appreciated the previous speaker talking about the storytelling, because that's how we as human beings actually absorb knowledge. And we learn through stories, and stories matter. And hopefully my story doesn't sound like this, but I'll tell you how I got into this whole thing. So I'm an engineer, have a degree in systems of artificial intelligence, used to be an engineer, then got into startups, then ended up co-founding a startup incubator in Los Angeles, and built a lot of startups, had some exits. Fortunately, I haven't become rich from that, otherwise I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And I started a nonprofit. Me and Anton, my colleague here, in 2020 we were helping medical researchers analyze scientific literature about COVID. So that pushed us into this amazing world of building technology for social good. In 2022, we helped Ukraine and refugee crisis during the war, helped with humanitarian aid, and that was also one more proof of building technology for social good. And then we started an initiative, basically a nonprofit research lab focusing on LLMs and AI agents. And during that time, I was traveling Central America. And with no intention of using AI anywhere there, I was trying to immerse myself into a culture. And basically, I saw active volcanoes, I saw nature, I've seen all these amazing beauties of the nature. But I felt like I was missing something. And that something was the fact that I couldn't find a single speaker of the native language in there. Simply because the utility wasn't there, and the younger generations were all basically growing up on TikToks and YouTube. So no one was learning that native language in there. And eventually I met those old grandmas in villages that speak native language of Guatemala, Quechequel, but it was such a sad realization that basically 1-2 generations and that entire culture will be gone. That's it. It will be erased from the world. And that's how I initially started thinking, all right, well, we have these amazing advancements of LLMs, how about we use that to save those languages, preserve the culture, and actually embrace that culture. So that's how it all started. And then I saw the guy on Twitter talking about doing exactly that. And I was like, hey, cool, how about we collaborate? I have 501c3, an actual nonprofit. I can enable this for you in terms of the actual incubation process. And we connected, and we started thinking about it, how to do it for Navajo language here in US as one of the endangered languages. And then we realized that it's not just endangered indigenous languages, it's also underrepresented languages. When we saw this conference, that is actually a conference for Ukrainian language, and me and Anton are from Ukraine, if you haven't figured out that yet. But when we saw that, we were like, this is weird. With so many NLP researchers from Ukraine, unicorns like Grammarly is from Ukraine, how come no one have done this? I couldn't believe that. And then we jumped into this challenge to actually fine-tune LLM to speak Ukrainian. And then we learned how hard that is, how complex of an issue that actually is. And then we started digging into it. And surprisingly, it's a topic that just started being talked about. AI revolution is crushing thousands of languages. Reddit people talking about, ChatGPT sounding like a foreigner. Hungarian talking about how, it's not talking properly. And then, like 2 weeks ago, I stumbled upon a paper that actually, did the research that even though ChatGPT can talk in Spanish, it doesn't know the context and the meaning of the words. How crazy is that? Whereas Spanish is it's spoken in Latin America and Central America, all over the world. And still, the issue is in there. Simply because we as a society, or let's call it AI bubble, focus on English, unfortunately. This is where the most utility is, this is where the most money is, and this is the unfortunate reality. So it's pretty clear to us what the actual problem is. It's language and cultural bias. It's basically the usability for non-English speakers and the fact that it perpetuates stereotypes or misunderstandings about culture. It's very clearly seen simply because most of the LLMs are being trained on, internet. And there's common crawl that basically 40% of it is purely English language. So that's where those biases are coming from. Also the ethical and fairness concerns, the diversity and inclusivity. This is it, basically people are not able to use ChatGPT. Whenever I speak at these events, people come to me and they tell me like, hey, I'm from Nepal and I basically can't use all of these tools. Like it doesn't make any sense when I type, things in my language. And then uneven knowledge representation, which is basically skewed representation of knowledge, history, perspectives, and embedding those biases into the model's outputs and the actual decision-making processes. And for now, it's just humans, right, making those decisions. But later on, it's going to be AI agents and all kinds of crazy things we're going to be building that operate on those biases. So that's why, we started digging into it. We participated in this conference, which is part of the Italian Computational Linguistics Conference. Our paper got accepted, peer-reviewed. It's now published. And we also talked at Google HQ meetup about our experience. You can find that talk on YouTube. And we started basically digging into the specifics of it, of like, how can you tell that these issues exist, which is not trivial at all, because at first you start asking, ChatGPT about borsch, like what is it, where it comes from, and in English it gives you a, pretty okay results. GPT 3.5 nailed it. Llama, the open source model, actually wasn't sure, so it said Eastern Europe, maybe Ukraine, Russia, Poland, or Belarus. And then Gemma was pretty good, even knew what it consists of. But then, when you try and actually localize it, that's where things get tricky. So ChatGPT nailed it, but then Llama couldn't even finish a sentence in Ukrainian. It automatically switched to English, while still being uncertain about the origin. So this is kind of the examples of things that we started noticing, and this was just like a high-level question without going deep. So then, what if you need some structure in your, interactions with LLM? So what we've done, we've tried the multi-choice type of question where we ask, what do we need beats for? The major product and the soup. And basically the options were car, borsch, dancing, or music. And it said borsch is used for cars. So clearly it doesn't understand and doesn't know the context of it all. So this is just an example of how, as a society, we're not even talking enough about the long-term consequences and the long-tail applications where this renders these LLMs basically unusable. And talking about applications, I like to put it in the context of things because I meet people here especially, and sometimes they tell me, so what? English should just win, right? But there are many, many applications where English can't win and will never win, because we have situations like Ukrainian refugees that are in USA and seeking asylum, and they could use tools like that to be able to adapt to certain regulations, certain laws, while still preserving their cultural identity. Or we can have the primary school teacher in rural Peruvian village that uses language-specific LLM to access educational materials in Quechua, that enables her to provide more engaging and culturally relevant lessons to her students. Things like that, especially within the educational context, this is what matters, because in 5 to 10 years, kids will learn through LLMs. They're already doing that while interacting in Roblox and Minecraft, and we're kind of not talking enough about it. But then, if LLMs are only in English, these kids will never learn their local cultures. They will disconnect from those, and that leads to many important issues. Yeah, so one more example, a software developer with Navajo heritage creates an interactive application powered by language-specific LLM that facilitates live conversational practice in Navajo for learners worldwide. So those are kinds of applications that we should be thinking about, especially in the educational context, because this will have a major impact on society. So now to challenges, the actual reasons why this is hard. First of all, there's not enough right kind of data. Most LLMs are being trained on the entirety of the internet, and basically, large companies scrape all of that data and they train LLMs on it. But for this to be language specific, you need not just corpus of text, but also high quality instructions for each language. And it's also not that trivial to train these models. There's a lot of magic happening in there just in general in terms of how LLMs work, but language specific, even harder. And evaluation is really, really hard. And you need native speakers and their participation of community and all of it, because otherwise it doesn't work. You may end up creating an LLM that kind of speaks the language, but you won't be able to evaluate if it actually does. And just to start wrapping this up, languages represent people, culture, and way of thought. We should stop thinking about language as just a communication tool, but rather something that brings out higher level of things in us, in society, and enables us to be who we are. Because it's actually a really sad kind of like future if we imagine everyone speaking just English, because there are languages that are phenomenons that are better described in different languages. If you're multilingual, you definitely understand what I'm talking about. So it's important to think about language as that. So what we're doing, we're currently expanding data sets, refining evaluation benchmarks, writing a second paper. We recently got a grant to pursue this for Navajo, so this should be an interesting experiment. And we're further pre-training and fine-tuning Gemma. So if anyone here wants to join the effort and help us out, we run this within the 501c3 nonprofit research lab called Polyagent. It's a community, basically a guild of people that build tools together, learn together, and we work on exciting challenges like this. So, thank you.
So one of the reasons why I thought Artur would be great to speak here is back in the past I was working on an idea where grandparents were fading away, or that generation was fading away, and there's so much there that's not on the internet that just disappears. But it's not just in English or in a particular language, it's many languages. So I think I'll start with my first question, if that's okay. But we talked about these token sizes and is there truly a way to get to a universal LLM that understands the tokens of different languages or all the languages that we speak? And what are the technical challenges that you see?
I actually think it's impossible by design, simply because if you think about it, in terms of the actual human diversity, culture diversity, we all have different representation of social norms, values, how we behave, how we're taught to behave, all of these things. And if you try to kind of normalize it to the mean, it doesn't work. It just converges to the culture that has the most data in there, which is English, and which is exactly what we're seeing. So in a way, it's impossible by design. I think we will end up having language-specific LLMs, and OpenAI just recently kind of showcased that that's going to be the future. They just opened the the office in Japan, and partnered with the government to get more Japanese data. It's an interesting, need and journey for a lot of companies to pursue and figure out how to do it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be one foundational LLM. Just on the architecture level, it seems impossible.
Maybe time for one quick question if anybody has. Michelle?
What kind of help would be the most useful, are you looking for in the community?
I would say more brains and hands, because there's a lot of work, and we're running this as an open source nonprofit thing. I wish we could attract more money and resources. Raul is actually helping us, through an AI Hero. So that's kind of the help that we're accumulating as a community. NVIDIA donated a DJ station for Tesla GPUs in 2022 to us, so we're using that. We're trying to get more compute, so I mean it's a tough ask, but if someone has some compute, you're more than welcome to donate that to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Artur.
Thank you.